Welcome to Deals with Heels, where female entrepreneurs thrive. I'm Debra, your host. Welcome to the show. Super excited about today's guest. She is a business growth specialist. And man, don't we all want to grow our businesses in the easiest way possible? I know I do. So let's jump right in, shall we? Laura Patterson is an entrepreneur, a speaker, board member, and author. She serves as the president of Vision Edge Marketing and is a pioneer in customer-centric growth strategy. A lifelong advocate of customer value, Laura has advised more than 300 companies on aligning strategy, operations, and metrics to drive measurable results. She's the creator of the Circle of Traction framework and the author of the award-winning Fast Track Your Business. Today, Laura helps organizations put the customer at the center of every decision. Please welcome Laura to Deals with Heels.
Yeah. Thank you, Debra. You made me sound really good.
Well, you are really good. You've done so many wonderful things. I forgot to mention that you're also the host of What's Your Edge. You have your own podcast and show. So we're so excited to have you here. I love to dig in with other marketing and salespeople. I often have them on the show. So I'm really happy to have you with us.
Well, I'm really glad to be here, and I hope that I can at least give your community at least one good idea today.
I think we're going to get several. But before we start, tell us a little bit just about your entrepreneurial journey so we can kind of know what your background is and how you got here.
I'm happy to do that. I need to be really honest. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. And I've been one now for over 26 years. I don't know what
Wow.
happened. I know, time flies. I started my career in which I spent a couple of decades in the corporate world, almost all of it in B2B, almost all of it in some form of technology or manufacturing company. And so most of our customers at Vision Edge Marketing are similar because that's the markets I understand best. B2B companies that have complex products, consultative selling cycles, long customer journey, multiple personas in the buying process. So how I got here, in 1999, if you could spell marketing in Austin, Texas, you could get a job. And I had been here since 1982. I came here to work for Motorola after working for a startup. This will really tell your people something about me. I worked for a startup that had an application software product that ran on a Wang 2200. So that'll give you
Wow.
guys a little bit of perspective. And before that, I was in just corporate America, insurance, financial services, health services.
We
Anyway, I
might be
ended up
close
here
to
in,
a similar age because I started my marketing career in 1990, right out of college. I
yeah.
think we're kind of all rocking that same kind of older Gen X vibe, right?
Yes, exactly. Anyway, so I was working for a startup company here in Austin that had an enterprise software application, and my phone was ringing a lot with people here because we had so many in Austin in 1999. They were like mushrooms sprouting up after a rain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Calling about jobs. And it seemed like that might be a good time to jump from the frying pan into the fire. And so I started up my own firm with a very, right from the start, a growth strategy firm focused on strategic and product marketing, essentially, not an agency, not a Marcom firm. We have lots of those. And that wasn't what they were really looking for. They were looking for how do we create plans for growth, not tactics to implement those plans, but the actual plan. And that's what I really enjoy doing, is coming up with how to do something creative that is customer centric in nature.
I love that. I'm a big marketing strategy person, so we would have made a very good team back
Oh, still
then, for
can.
sure. And still to this day. And one of the things that I talk about a lot on the show is how our industry is very segmented and it's difficult for businesses to tell what kind of a marketing company or agency that they're looking for. And often I find businesses to business companies. So they're selling to another business, guys, and they are completely with the wrong company type of an agency, not necessarily the wrong company. If their customers were easily and inexpensively found on social media, then they would be at the right place. But they're business to business. And it's not that they're not on some social media platform. It's that millions of other people are on there with them that you have to contact and pay to contact and spend money to contact. So it's so fantastic to have someone that's really focused on business to business their whole career. So I love that. And you have like a specific framework. Let me see. I said it in the introduction, but when I get going, my memory sometimes your circle of traction framework. And I really love that because we're always looking for traction. You have to get traction before you can build momentum. So tell us about that. How does that work?
We do have frameworks, and the circle of traction has been with us for a very long time. And it is actually something people can pick up and read and fast track your business. We have put it on in black and white, which is a result of a customer ask, by the way. So just quick story, customer that I've worked with many, many years before he retired through 3 or 4 different companies that he worked for as a chief growth officer would have me come in and talk about the circle of traction, which in its earliest days was called that growth wheel. That's what he would call it. Can you come talk about that growth wheel?
Right? Because to him, that's what it was. Just
That's what
talking
it
about,
was.
right. It's a growth wheel.
That growth wheel. And after the last time that I did that for the company he was working with, his last company, he said, "What are you going to put that growth wheel in a book?" And I said, "John, I have already done 3 books. I don't think I have another book in me." There's such a labor of love. And I know you know that. And anyone listening who's done a book knows that. He said, "Well, I hope you reconsider that." Eventually, obviously, I did reconsider it because we have Fast Track Your Business, which is done very, very well. And I'm very grateful to everyone who has purchased it and bought it. But essentially, it starts off with the idea that before you do anything else, you really need to know your customers. You need to know who you're targeting, what is of value to them, what is the problem you're solving or the aspiration you're helping them achieve. Who are they? Why would they care about what you're doing and what you're offering them? What is success for them? All of those kinds of questions. You need to understand the answers to those questions before you do anything else.
Bow down, right? Let's just say
You'd be
amen,
surprised.
sister,
You'd
right?
be surprised, right? And a lot of our customers, which back in the early day, of course, being many of them new companies, had the philosophy because they are B2B and they are in technology and they are in manufacturing or life sciences or logistics or some other type of industry like that, it had a very product centric focus. If we build it, they will come.
Right. What don't you wish that were still true, right?
I
When if I
do.
just build my website, it will
It
get
was
traffic
never
because
true. My whole point. It was never true. And so they quickly moved from being a product centric company to a sales centric company. We'll just go out and get a bunch of salespeople or people who can do business development or whatever. And this is where marketing gets kind of messed up. And we'll go and beat the bushes, pound the pavement, whatever phrase you want to use, and go get business. And in the old days, we'll leverage their Rolodex. Today, we'll leverage their LinkedIn network, right? So same idea. And of course, we know those companies because it's all about making a number. They've got a number at the beginning of the month, at the beginning of the quarter, and it's all about revenue, which is great. We all need to make money, but we don't market to buckets of revenue. And so you've got all these people out there doing all kinds of stuff, and they're just random activities that begin to break down the strategy, actually, because everyone's saying whatever they need to say to make their number. And so those all of a sudden you've gone from this, if we build it, they will come, to this company that's knocking on every door, making every phone call or sending a text message or doing 100 emails or how about all those LinkedIn messages that we get? Like those kinds of things.
man, right?
I get another,
I am just like, okay, I accepted your connection so that we could connect and collaborate and I could learn more about what you do, not so I could receive a weekly or a daily and then reminders on top of your dang sales pitch. You're
yeah.
right.
I often say to people who I do connect with and that reach out to me, please don't make your next message a pitch because that's what comes next. And I'm like, you don't even know me yet. How can you pitch to me? I mean, yeah,
Right?
you see some information on LinkedIn, but you don't know anything about me, any of the real problems that I have, or any of the real issues I have. And oftentimes, I'll get that back, and maybe people listening can get a similar message back when they do that, which is that's not a pain point for me at this time. No, thank you. Because they don't even know what my pain is. So back to the circle of traction, you got to know that. Once you know that, and so the circle of traction is a wheel, and in the wheel it has an axis, and there's some things you've got to have in place in order for the circle of traction to work. First of all, you got to have the culture of the right mindset and culture around customer centricity. Otherwise, you won't get much value trying to be customer centric if that's not your culture. And you got to have data and the ability to analyze that data, because you're going to be making data-driven decisions. So there's some basic things you got to have. You got to have your infrastructure in place, and you've got to have people who know how to use those and have the skills and capabilities and expertise to do the work. I know we're all in and enamored with AI, and we think it can do everything. I get that, because I know I'm enamored too. Was one of
Right?
the
We
first
all
people to
are.
sign up for ChatGPT 2.5 years ago. So I totally get that. But you got to have people. I mean, still is people, let's face it, people sell to people. We don't sell to robots. People sell to people.
We do. And on its basic level, sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. I'm so enthusiastic about it. This is how well it works. This is how well it's worked for other people. Let me show it to you. Once they've transferred that, you either have a sale or you have a referral, right? You
Yes,
have one of those two things, but you can't transfer enthusiasm if you don't give a crap what the customer thinks in the
exactly.
end. And if your whole products and services and the brand, the part of the brand that people forget about, how does it work? How do we feel about our customers? How do we interact? How's our pricing structure with everybody else? So if they're not doing that, then that enthusiasm, it's hard to be enthusiastic about something if you're not putting your customer first, right? I love
Exactly.
that.
And once you know and have those insights, now you can make some better decisions. You can make decisions about what segments and personas you want to pursue, because now you can see, well, how big is that problem? Is that problem big enough to warrant a business, right? Are there enough people who have this problem? Where are they? What kinds of verticals are they in? How are they solving it today? And how would I solve it better? Are they just not solving it today? And if they aren't, what does that mean? They're just limping along, or it's not a big enough pain. Other things are more important. So all that kind of information will feed the decisions you make, which segments, which personas, and then you can put together a strategy. And a lot of people want to put together all the stuff they're going to do. Like, and I know you know this, and I'm sure
Hmm.
some of your members of your community have had this experience. Okay, now we have that. So we're going to race out, we're going to do social media posts, and we're going to write some email campaigns, and we're going to go do a LinkedIn connection campaign, and we're going to go find some and do a virtual webinar. And they have a list of things they're going to do that are not designed to accomplish anything because they haven't put a strategy in place yet. And I don't mean a strategy, a Marcom strategy. I mean a growth strategy. So people come up with a Marcom. When I say, well, what's your strategy? They'll say, events or referrals or something like that. Those are not strategies. Those might be programs, but they're not a growth strategy.
Right.
So,
There are the tactics within the strategy. And guess what? They can be achieved in a variety of different ways, right? You can
yes,
buy around a station. You can use a different social media platform. The people are out there. Those are tactics. And the strategy are what's the best way to get them that works for you and your company and your brand. So
yes.
what are if someone's out there saying, gosh, this makes so much sense to me. I didn't do that. I need to start. Where's the first place they should start?
Well, if you're already an established business, right,
Hmm.
already have some traction in the marketplace, I recommend taking a look at three things sort of to sort as a simple way, right? Because we in marketing and we as business people, we have three ways to grow. Well, really four ways to grow, but the fourth way is really hard. So we have easier ways to grow. We can sell to people that already know and like us, and we can sell more to them. We can create new products just for them because maybe we have a customer advisory board, and that customer advisory board has said, we have these three issues that we're trying to address. What could you do to help us with that? And you do enough research to find out it's a big enough opportunity, and you offer that so you can grow share of wallet. You can increase the amount of business you're doing with those existing customers, and maybe even expand into a market that you're already in. Right. So
Right.
that's
There's some
one.
ancillary products that are related to what you're already
Exactly.
offering to your customers that they also need. And now that you're a valued, trusted source for them for this, they'll trust you for something else as well.
Right. So share of wallet, referral, and footprint expansion strategies work kind of well with that thing that we want to do. Another thing we can do is say, wow, we've done pretty well in this market already. There's not a lot left for us to do there. Maybe we already have all the market share we're going to get. And we've decided that we want to do something else, go somewhere else. So we're looking for new customers. So now we're looking at potential adjacent market strategies, additional verticals, or niches. We may have a problem that's been working really well with one persona, and we believe that another persona has that problem, and we might want to go after a niche market. Or maybe we have been in a geography, in an ecosystem in a geography, and we see that there's a similar type of an ecosystem in another geography. So we want to expand that way. So that's looking at customers we're not serving today in markets we're not serving today with products we already have, right? Or products that we're going to be bringing to market and that may have worked in the market that we're in. So those are the three things. So I always say to people, what are the existing customers that you're going to grow with? What is it you're going to help them achieve that you're not helping them achieve today that will allow you to grow, profitably grow? What are some new customers that would want what you already have? And what are potentially some new customers that might want things you're going to be bringing to market that you have validated in the market with existing customers? So if you can think about your plan from that perspective, then you can build strategies accordingly. So if you were going to go into an adjacent market, you might want a referral strategy because there may be people in your current customer set that know people in that customer set. They might not know people in another ecosystem. They might not know people in another geography, but they might know people in a vertical or a niche or something that's in the same geography that you're in. So those would be examples of different things you might do as a strategy. Once you have the strategy, obviously you need to operationalize that into a real plan, implement that plan, and set the right measures. I think a lot of business leaders are challenged by picking the right measures. They end up looking at measures around activity or maybe output, but not really measures that are moving as we say here in Texas, I know you're up in Oklahoma, so you probably use this too, moving the ball down the field.
Yep, that and it is a common thing. We get caught up in what I call vanity metrics, right? Because the dopamine hit. You're on social media or LinkedIn and wow, look at all the activity on my post. I got 100 likes or this many comments. And now you're coming back and checking it and getting that let down. It's designed to give you that dopamine hit, just like drugs and alcohol and all the fun stuff in life do. So we want that. We're used to seeing that. And then suddenly we're surprised when that doesn't transfer into actual sales. So things like impressions, click-through rate, number of clicks, all of those things are great to tell us if the tactics we're using in our strategy work, but they don't tell us and to figure out where the breaking point is if we're not converting that to a lead we can sell. It's great for that. But the real measure is, did you get a lift in business? And if you didn't, where is the break, right? Where is the strategy falling apart? It might be your advertising strategy or your messaging, or it might be your funnel. And you can tell all of that within the tactics and those metrics, but you cannot gauge your results based on how many people liked it, how many people commented on it, click-through rates, impressions, and engagement, unless you're trying to be an influencer, which those better be in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands if you expect to make money off pure content. Then those aren't the metrics that you should be paying attention to. And they are designed to occupy your time and to give you that hit and to make you want more. So what Laura's talking about is really important for that business to business community. And those are some really good tips.
To buy XYZ number of our ABC product at this price point for this amount of revenue. And maybe we want another outcome that says we want to acquire X number of net new customers in this key market segment that will buy ABC product at this average cost for this amount of revenue. So now that you start articulating exactly what the outcome is, then you can look and say, well, what is that KPI going to be? So in the first example, it's probably share of wallet because we're going to grow the share of wallet we have with those customers. In the second example, it might be product adoption rate, right? Two different KPIs as an example. Now, when you ask your rest of your team or you build out your sales, marketing, service, product, whatever plans you're going to do to bring those outcomes to life, everybody understands exactly what measure or metric they need to be contributing to. So their question ought to be, if I'm in marketing or sales, let's just use them as an example, since I know that's a large portion of your listening community. What measure can I use that will show that I am contributing to that KPI? What measure can I use that shows that I am contributing to share of wallet? What measure can I use that shows that I am contributing to the product adoption rate? That will change the way you think about your own measure for your little world. And that will cascade down into your rest of your plan, because now every measure will be connected. This is type of alignment is what we do with our excellence methodology and our excellence framework, is getting people to think that whole process all the way down. And so maybe that'll help people as they're thinking about their planning.
I really also like to get really in and let's talk about the actual sales projections, something that corporate marketing, you and I had to set our butts in those chairs and be accountable to the ones that we said we were going to get. We were going to grow this much. Did we do it? All the accountings and managers and non-creatives love to tell us whether we did a good job or we didn't do a good job. I think it gives us a sense of accountability often that we don't find. But sales projections are important, and how much it costs you to produce whatever that sales product or service is really important. How much of it do you need to sell in order to cash flow and to make that profit? What's the price point at it that makes that happen? I have sat down before with somebody and they had their budget and we sat down and talked about, so you speak to however many people a week, right? Well, let's back it up and do it the opposite. Let's find out how many sales you need per week to cover your nut, right? To cover everything that you need to cover to produce that product. I think people leave that step out and they just like, well, I'm going to charge $199 for it. Well, does that cover everything that it needs to cover? And if it does, then fantastic. Now, how much of it do you need to sell? So what's your percentage that you close of the people you talk to? Now you know how many people you have to talk to every single week to make that goal. And how are you going to generate those? So adding those numbers in, what she's talking about, those projections on a corporate level, they've got all that, right? But on a small business, a lot of you guys are small business owners and you don't have those numbers people. You can get a CPA to help you, but they can't tell you how much you can sell, right? How much can I sell? How much advertising can I sell? How much can I do? How much does it cost me to produce it? How much do I need to sell to meet those goals? Those added in and what she's talking about will do so much. If you plan that out, now you know what you're working towards, and you can use challenge mindset to hit those goals and build campaigns around those plateaus in your goals that you're trying to reach. Such a huge deal, Laura. That's so awesome. You guide all of those business to business clients all the way through it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're talking about the pipeline, right? What is the conversion at each step of the way? And that is really critical. How many you need at the end is contingent upon how many of these will convert in this stage, how many of those will convert in this stage. And I do think that it's really important for people to think about what their conversion rates are for every call to action that they're making, so that they have clarity around how many conversations they need to have and at what point in the cycle do they need to have those if they want a number at the end. I think that's a really valuable and worth emphasizing how important that is.
So I want to ask one more thing. Do you recommend, I always see, and one thing that especially small businesses that we don't ever have time to put it through, but that whole customer experience, the having someone walk through your customer's experience. What is the experience of walking through Laura's business, right? And we get so blindsided by our point of view and how we think customers think that we forget about that. But we've all been to a hotel that needs to do it, or a restaurant that needs to do it, or any kind of business, a clothing store, an ad
A
agency,
dry
all of them.
cleaner, a dry cleaner.
Right?
I guess
Yes,
because I just
everybody.
had that kind of experience with the local dry
Well,
cleaner.
and what that is someone walks through as a customer. They go through your whole buying cycle. but they're a plant. They're a mystery shopper, right? And that just isn't just people walking into a store. That can be for anyone. And I have never done it. I don't have anyone necessarily that I can refer to that takes care of that, but I think that that fits in well. If they don't have the information that you need to build that framework on who they are and what's it like and where it's breaking down. What do you think about those models and focusing on that?
Yeah, it is important to understand the customer experience. And I think it's going to be different in transactional businesses, like a dry cleaner, for example, which is much more typically transactional than the kinds of companies which we tend to work with, which have a lot more at stake. I mean, not that I would want my clothes to get lost or ruined. That would not be a good thing. But when you're a business and you're about to make a pretty big investment on something that's going to affect what you do and your product and your customers for a very long period of time, and you probably can't change out very easily. I can change my dry cleaner, not be able
Right.
to change this other thing very easily. So I think it's worth investing in a customer advisory board, because those are the people who can tell you this is the experience they've had with your company. This is the experience they'd like to have. Here's where the breakpoints were. If I had to focus on A or B, here's what I would do. Here's the experience I've had with other companies, what I really liked about working with them, or here's some experiences I didn't like. Let's not ever do that again. Here's things you really are like sacred cows. Don't ever change this in your company. And these are things that, oh, if they went away, which are maybe costing you money, we don't care about, right? A
Mm-hmm.
customer advisory board can be a great way to get that kind of information affordably. Otherwise, you are having to buy, some research. You might have to buy
Mm-hmm.
research, or you might have to pay to conduct research. Or
God, I love market research, right? When
me
somebody can
too.
just pop
I've
it
got my teeth
out
on
and you
market
can
research.
dig
So
in.
as a researcher, totally get that. I love that. But I recognize that smaller, SMB companies, that might not be the first thing that they can do. There
So
may be,
how can they tap into a customer advisory council? Do
well,
they create one? Are there some that are existing for specific industries that they can?
I would recommend they create one, because your customers are your customers,
Right.
and what they share with you, it should be private. There's other ways to tap into, like an association. If you're part of an association, they may have some information that would be helpful. They may be willing to do some market research for some of their members that is more generic that you could borrow from. So
Right.
trade associations can help with that. Local chambers, if you're very local, can help with that. For example, it's another way you might be able to get some research. But if you're larger and you're a national or global company with a
Oh,
pretty,
well, you definitely should make one if
they should
you're a
make one.
large or even a mid-sized company.
Yes,
You
make
should
one.
be able to find. But if you're a smaller company, you may have to do some of that market research yourself in order to do it. For example, if you build pools and you build 25 a year, you're eventually going to build up to where you have enough trusted customers to put on that council, I suppose. I'm not super knowledgeable about how to form one. So we will look at some resources on that too.
Yeah. On our website, we have a very popular couple of articles on creating an advisory board. Just go to visionedgemarketing.com, type in advisory boards or customer advisory boards, and things will pop up. And there's like two or three that are very, very popular. So feel free to borrow those.
Fantastic. And I will link to those in the show notes. I glanced through them and thought, this is so fantastic. I have a friend who's very customer experience centric. He worked for Hilton Worldwide for a long time, and he did a lot of that for them. And I've just been enthralled with it. And when your customer centric growth strategy came across for a potential guest, I knew I had to have you on the show because it is so important. People forget about the experience and that a customer has and keeping them. I mean, we all have churn, but we want to keep them in our own pipeline
At
for
least
as
the
long
ones
as
that are
possible.
profitable.
Right. Yeah. As long as they're profitable, and then we can market to them and sell them more stuff
I just
and
had a
all of the
conversation. The reason I say
things.
that, I just had a conversation with a company who has finally gone at our suggestion through their customer list and identified which of those customers are profitable, which ones are not profitable. And we're having a conversation what to do about the ones that are not profitable. I know this is a little bit off topic, but I'm sure this is true for many of us. We have customers that maybe we've been working with for a long time. So, one of the things we talk about in terms of profitability isn't just the actual dollars, but what is the referral rate or the number of introductions they're making for you? Because there's value to that. What is that worth? It's worth money because it reduces time to close. It also has usually a higher close rate, lower cost to acquire. So that's got value. But once you go through and you've identified how you're going to determine which customers are no longer really profitable, both in terms of actual business and these other peripheral kinds of things, what do you do? So, you don't just jettison them. So we have some things we recommend people do with those customers in order to either determine how to get them profitable or what to do to get them off your books in the right way so that they have a good experience. Because that's going to be really important too, because ultimately, it all comes down to what people say about you and your
Right.
reputation and your delivery. So you'll have to really think that through if you decide that some of your customers are no longer, right for your mix.
And it's really important to make sure that the customers you have are still aligned with your mindset and your message. I'm really big on mindset. And one of the things that I learned recently is that sometimes the client that you have that you think is your foundation, I'm going to have this is part of who we are, kind of becomes part of your brand and your identity as a business, right? That I've been with this person for so long. People think of me as their agency or their groomer or whatever it is, right? Then when you let go of that customer, sometimes willingly, sometimes not willingly, you realize that they weren't your foundation. They were the anchor that was keeping your business from growing in the way that it needed to and for you expanding and evolving. So keep in mind what she's talking about is really important. You don't have to wait to get fired as an agency or as a business. You can make really proactive decisions on whether or not you align well with somebody as a client, if they're profitable still, if they take up all of your time and they're a problem. Those are really valuable conversations to have with yourself and with your advisory council and your brand, your business, people that you work with. All of the things that Laura talked about are really important and oddly also coincide with recent things that have come up for clients of mine as well, which is as soon as that one client was gone, they soared, new ideas flowed in. Sometimes that one client keeps you stagnant. So identifying who they are is important. So, and you gave us great tips for that as well. I want to end with just one, want you to tell us how they can find out more about how to hire you, of course, and listen to your podcast as well. But I always like to end with some tips on, for this time, obviously, what is like some of the basic things? Just give us one or two that a small business can do that is trying to become more customer-centric and customer-focused.
Good question. I like that question. So I'm going to answer that question first, and then I'll tell people how they can reach me.
Okay.
Way back when, probably in the 90s, there was a book called The Moments of Truth that was written by the CEO of Scandinavian Airlines. I really recommend it. We have a little bit about Moments of Truth on our website. If you type in Moments of Truth, it'll come up. But if you're really interested in customer centricity, this was for me a really valuable book because what he talks about in this is that every interaction with the customer is a moment of truth. And so that means every person in your company needs to understand what it is that you are promising in the experience with your customers to ensure that in every moment of truth, you're delivering that. So that's something. Think about your moments of truth and realize that they happen all over the place, including the bill you send, how you resolve a problem for payment, email that you send, what the document is that you send, the conversation you have, the meeting that you schedule. Every one of those touches is a moment of truth. So just go in, think about what are all the different ways that we're touching our customers, and are we delivering on that moment of truth? So that's a very simple thing. We all know what those touch points are. And we need to remember that those touch points aren't only in sales. They're everywhere. They could be in purchasing. They could be in accounting. They can be in the contract development. They can be with any number of different things. So give that some thought. That's moments of truth. And the second thing is, as business owners, it's very easy for us unfortunately, to get bogged down with random acts. And so therefore, my second tip is whenever an opportunity presents itself, which happens every day, or a problem presents itself, such as internal issue with a supplier, or an internal issue with an employee, or something comes up with a customer that was unexpected, or an opportunity to sponsor something in your community, or a request for, some kind of other support for something in your community. They're all over the place, right? They come in every day. Ask yourself, what business outcome will this random act positively impact? Because it's everything that we do in our businesses comes down to time and money and energy. So you can only do so many of those. And the data shows that most of us in business, as business leaders, end up with 30 to 50% of our time every day getting sucked into these random acts.
Yes.
Whether that's an email that pops up or a text message or whatever it might be. So every time that comes up, think to yourself, in terms of your energy, in terms of your attention and your time, what business outcome will this positively impact? And then if it isn't going to positively impact a business outcome, maybe it isn't something you need to do today.
I love that. It's fantastic advice. I get sucked into rabbit holes. And so for me, my goal is I'm going to honor my creative boundary. When I'm in creative mode, I'll get pulled away by some little thing, right, that needs attention. And it's very difficult to pop back into being creative. It's not something that you can just pop in and out of, and it causes a great deal of stress to try to do it. So honoring that boundary, and that really speaks to that as well. So fantastic tips, you guys. I hope you guys wrote them all down. If not, of course, you can always just re-listen to the episode.
And
Tell
feel
us,
free to
Laura.
they can feel free to reach out to me at Vision Edge
Yes.
Marketing, RP at visionedgemarketing.com, or on the website. I'm happy to connect with people if they have any questions.
And she also is really involved in LinkedIn. You have a pretty good presence there, which she and I connected there. So check out there, and I will link to all of her stuff in the show notes so you can reach out and talk to her about hiring her agency or just learn more about their framework. She's been doing it a really long time, and it's super impressive. I'm so grateful to have you come on the show, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Debra. I enjoyed it.
Yes, come back anytime. So until next week, everyone, we are out. Please like, share, download, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.